No, that knife, it is not mine." Then the police inspector said, "This morning, the merchant was found stabbed to death in his bed. No one except you could have done it. The tavern was locked on the inside, and there was no one in the tavern except yourself. And here is the bloody knife in your bag, and your guilt is evident in your face. Tell me how you killed him and how much money you took from him." Aksionov swore that he had not done it, that he had not seen the merchant after he had drunk tea with him, that the only money he had with him, 8,000 rubles, was his own, and that the knife was not his. But his voice trembled, his face was pale, and he was all quivering with fright like a guilty person. The police inspector called the soldiers, commanded them to bind Aksionov and take him to the carriage. When they took him to the carriage with his feet tied, Aksionov crossed himself and burst into tears. They confiscated Aksionov's possessions and his money, and took him to the next city and threw him into prison. They sent to Vladimir to make inquiries about Aksionov's character, and all the merchants and citizens of Vladimir declared that Aksionov, when he was young, used to drink and was wild, but that now he was a worthy man. Then he was brought up for judgment. He was sentenced for having killed the merchant and for having robbed him of 20,000 rubles. Aksionov's wife was dumbfounded by the event and did not know what to think. Her children were still small, and there was one at the breast. She took them all with her and journeyed to the city where her husband was imprisoned. At first they would not grant her admittance, but afterward she got permission from the chief and was taken to her husband. When she saw him in his prison garb, in chains together with the murderers, she fell to the floor, and it was a long time before she recovered from her swoon. Then she placed her children around her, sat down amid them, and began to tell him about their domestic affairs, and to ask him about everything that had happened to him. He told her the whole story. She asked, "What is to be the result of it?" He said, "We must petition the Tsar. It is impossible that an innocent man should be condemned." The wife said that she had already sent in a petition to the Tsar, but that the petition had not been granted. Aksionov said nothing, but was evidently very much downcast. Then his wife said, "You see, the dream that I had, when I dreamed that you had become grey-headed, meant something after all. Already your hair has begun to turn grey with trouble. You ought to have stayed at home that time." And she began to tear her hair. And she said, "Vanya, my dearest husband, tell your wife the truth. Did you commit that crime or not?" Aksionov said, "So, you too have no faith in me." And he wrung his hands and wept. Then a soldier came and said that it was time for the wife and children to go. And Aksionov, for the last time, bade farewell to his family. When his wife was gone, Aksionov began to think over all that they had said. When he remembered that his wife also had distrusted him and had asked him if he had murdered the merchant, he said to himself, "It is evident that no one but God can know the truth of the matter, and he is the only one to ask for mercy, and he is the only one from whom to expect it." And from that time, Aksionov ceased to send in petitions, ceased to hope, and only prayed to God. Aksionov was sentenced to be knouted and then to exile with hard labour. And so it was done. He was flogged with the knout, and then, when the wounds from the knout were healed, he was sent with the other exiles to Siberia. Aksionov lived 26 years in the mines. The hair on his head had become white as snow, and his beard had grown long, thin, and grey. All his gaiety had vanished. He was bent, his gait was slow, he spoke little, he never laughed, and he spent much of his time in prayer. Aksionov had learned while in prison to make boots, and with the money that he earned, he bought the Book of Martyrs, and used to read it when it was light enough in prison, and on holidays he would go to the prison church, read the Gospels, and sing in the choir, for his voice was still strong and good. The authorities liked Aksionov for his submissive